Interested in appearing on Fox Focus? Email us at foxfocus@fox.com.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wisconsin Weather Experts on this Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 20th day of August, and it was just a couple of years ago that we were sweating. I know we've had a hot summer, but back in 2023, we were in the middle of a significant heat wave. We weren't alone. It was a huge portion of the country that was sweating right along with us. It was a historic heat wave for most of the central United States back in 2023. High temperatures and high dew points gave us some heat index values that were way up there. In fact, on this date in 2023, Lawrenceville, Kansas had a heat index of 134 degrees.
Gosh, could you imagine?
I don't even want to imagine. We've had enough hot, sticky weather this summer. We've not had any 134s, maybe 104 a couple of times, but no, I would not want to revisit that. But I do remember it, and you were remembering it too.
Yes, I was on maternity leave, towards the end of my maternity leave, but I remember it must have been that year, sometime in July, where we also had heat.
We had a couple rounds,
I very rarely keep my kids home from daycare, but on really hot days I do, just because we don't really do anything. And I remember there were two separate times that summer where I did, because it was
2023 was a very hot year. This one's been a pretty hot one as well. I'm sure by the time we get to the end of meteorological summer, we'll crunch the numbers and see where we're at. Of course, lately it has been more about the wet. And there, of course, are always people stepping up to help.
Yeah, and thankfully, because we still need it. Last week's storms, as we know, flooded countless homes, and flooding in your home can cause multiple problems even after the water is gone. Floodwaters can have sewage and bacteria that can make you sick if you get in contact with it. The Salvation Army is giving away free cleaning kits to help people impacted by the floods. Earlier this week, the Salvation Army received nearly 1,000 cleanup kits. The 5-gallon buckets have items essential for safe cleanups. It includes rubber gloves, face masks, laundry detergent, and more. Now, items like furniture and other home surfaces that are damaged by floodwater must be cleaned so you don't get sick, and sometimes they have to be thrown out completely. The Milwaukee Health Department says the kits are made possible through a donation from the United Methodist Committee on Relief, with support of the Salvation Army. Now, the Director of Emergency Disaster Services says the Salvation says cleaning supplies are in high demand.
This is to help people start the recovery process. It's been one of the most requested resources we've been getting from emergency management and from people that have been impacted by this flood.
Benedict says crews are also on the ground giving out food and water to help for people who need it. That cleaning is just essential, though.
Right.
I mean, and there are people who, number one, can't afford it and can't do it themselves, too. So it's great that there are options.
Disabled folks who need a lot of help. Fortunately, there is help out there. It's going to be a long time before we get to the end of this. Crews are actually still out in the field this week, helping with the cleanup efforts. Free curbside pickup and drop-off centers. They're extended through this week. If you have any bulky items, the city is also offering free special pickups. Crews are finishing up their first pass-through of the city, and once it's done, they will begin the second sweep. So meanwhile, recycling collections are expected to resume on the 25th of August. And last but not least, crews are also out addressing street lighting outages. That continues as well from the flooding.
And now we're talking FEMA. You know, we've been waiting for updates essentially over the last couple of days. And it is official that FEMA will now visit 3 of the hardest hit counties here in southeast Wisconsin, being Waukesha, Washington, and here in Milwaukee County, where you see crews taking away pile after pile of damaged items. Other counties could be added later on. Fox 6's Jason Calvi has the latest.
Devastating floods turned people's treasures into trash. On Thursday, the Federal Emergency Management Agency will start inspecting the damage. That's a necessary step. When that joint assessment wraps, the governor can ask the president to declare a major disaster. With that, it could unlock disaster money for flood victims.
And I trust that we're going to press for fair treatment. Whatever that number is, I'm going to leverage the bipartisan relationship to get every dime.
Earlier on Tuesday, Wisconsin's entire congressional delegation wrote FEMA's head with a, quote, urgent request. They urged FEMA start the required assessment as soon as possible. Within hours, we confirmed it was starting Thursday. Milwaukee County says it surveyed more than 3,000 properties. And of those, 53% were considered majorly damaged or destroyed. They don't have a total price tag for private property damage, but $34 million for public infrastructure. Washington County says it surveyed 800 homes. 70 were considered destroyed or having major damage. They report $1.8 million in damage to public property.
This is Rockfield Road in Germantown. Look at this, now just a cliff and gigantic crater.
Waukesha County reports $86 million of damage to private property and $4.4 million for public property.
19,000 people have reported damage to 211. That's in the 9 counties around Milwaukee. More than 80% were in Milwaukee County, including in West Dallas as well. Now, we're also talking about the impact on human mental health.
Yeah, because this was a impactful event in more ways than one. A lot of you, as we all know, are still coping with the aftermath of the flooding, not just with the physical damage, but the emotional toll as well. Now we hear from Fox 6's Abril Preciado on this topic.
It's hard to describe because when I first saw the water from looking down into the basement, your heart just sinks.
Jewel Salgado is still processing the damage.
A lot. Look at all the clothing. You know, I had a lot of stuff stored downstairs.
Her Milwaukee home is among the thousands hit by the historic flooding.
Who would have thought?
Salgado says several feet of water took over her basement, leaving her staring at ruined furniture, clothing, and other sentimental valuables. Now stacked outside her home, waiting to be hauled off.
Just stressed, you know, sense of loss.
It's a feeling psychiatrist Daniel Martinez says is common after disasters.
We have suffered a big loss, but life is about loss and change. And so the idea is, how do we just get over another hurdle, particularly for those people who haven't suffered tragedy?
Martinez encourages impacted people to turn to loved ones, neighbors, and even help groups for support.
Getting help is the most important and crucial thing for ourselves. Nobody can do it alone. Going to ask for help is a sign of strength, not of weakness.
While Salgado processes the loss of her keepsakes,
I lost my kids' awards and their pictures, some pictures of me when I was a baby, you know, and all that. And it's just so overwhelming.
She's extending support to her neighbors, knowing she's not going through it alone.
I happen to have a dolly, offered it to them if they needed it, because they lost their washer and their dryer and their chest freezer.
In Milwaukee, Abril Preciado, FOX 6 News.
Now, if you are looking for local mental health resources, you can head to the Fox Local mobile app and find hopefully some beneficial information there.
Yeah, and definitely reach out. It's important that you do. I think it'll be helpful for us to end on or at least end this segment on a lighter note, because we did have some very good weather for the folks downtown Milwaukee who got to get a little caffeinated for a good reason. Tuesday morning, the rain cleared up just in time. All the downtown Milwaukee employees got to have coffee and donuts at what they were calling the world's largest coffee break.
Love
Milwaukee
it.
Downtown bid to organize the fun, taking place at Catalano Square. This was just one event of many planned for the week. And of course, there's even more like Bring Your Dog to Work Day. They've got a full schedule posted on the Fox Local mobile app. But I was so happy that the skies cleared up just in time for that, because otherwise, it's no fun having your coffee with a side of rainwater.
Yeah, world's largest, maybe wettest coffee.
Yeah, that's right, / wettest
Sadly,
coffee break. Now,
rainiest.
happy to say that we are drying up, right?
Yes.
We're also cooling down, lots going on. Let's take a look at our regional outlook.
Yeah, we don't have as much rain in our forecast, thankfully. Maybe just one chance heading on into Friday evening. But the bigger story, I'd say, is that incoming cool down, as Rob just mentioned. But looking at the bigger picture here, much of the U.S. is actually pretty quiet. We've got a few showers and storms down south, and this is where there's also, a marginal threat for a couple of severe thunderstorms, again, down towards the south. south. There are a few showers out towards the west, and then we can't ignore the obvious on this map. Look at that hurricane. It is massive. Just off the coast here, you can still see that clearly defined eye. That, of course, is Hurricane Erin. And now the New England states, so up towards the northeast, still dealing with a couple of different low pressure systems, but we're, more so focusing in on the Carolinas and specifically the Outer Banks of North Carolina as we watch this hurricane get close to the east coast, but it is once again not expected to make direct landfall. But putting this in motion here, I mean, look at the spin to this, look at that clear defined eye. It is still a Category 2 storm. At last check, it had max sustained winds of 110 miles per hour. Now, North Carolina specifically, and even areas just up towards the north too, will likely get in on the far outer bands of this. So some rain, some thunder expected with this, as well as some wind, absolutely. Biggest impacts will actually be the higher waves, the rip currents, and then the potential for up to 4 feet of storm surge. Here's a look at Sky Vision, just showing how close the outer bands get to portions of North Carolina, and that's overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. The eye still stays well out over the ocean or out over water. So again, no landfall here, but then up the coast may still get in on some of the wind and rain as this storm then starts to make its way towards the north and then eventually east. So by the weekend, this will no longer have any impacts to our country, but we are watching, again, Carolinas and then up the coast, at least a little bit of storm surge. In the blue here, more so 1 to 2 feet looking to be a possibility of storm surge, but right around North Carolina and especially the Outer Banks there in the yellow, up to about 4 feet of storm surge going to be a possibility. So as far as the big picture goes weather-wise, that is the biggest story at this point in time. Now, dew points looks like they're in the process of updating here locally, are going to be in the process of dropping. So we also have some cooler weather and some drier weather to look ahead to, especially by the time we hit the weekend and early next week. That's when we're going to see this bit of a pattern change going forward. Now, we are expecting still a little bit of cloud cover through the remainder of the day today across the state of Wisconsin, but potentially by early evening, maybe just before sunset, we'll start to see clearing clouds. Already seeing a few peaks of sunshine here at our station in Brown Deer, north of Milwaukee, but a little bit of cloud cover still going to be with us for today. Thursday, full sunshine expected, and even on into Friday looking pretty good, although up towards the northwest, as well as western parts of the state as a whole, Friday morning we'll start to see some showers and thunderstorms developing along that next frontal boundary. It's possible those of us in the east and especially towards the south see a little bit of that Friday night into early Saturday morning. Some models still kind of fizzle a lot of it out, but for now we do have the chance as that front pushes through late Friday night for a few showers and storms here in southeastern parts of the state. Temperature-wise, it's been a bit cool the last couple of days in eastern parts of Wisconsin, and that's thanks in part to the cloud cover. Yesterday, places like La Crosse and Eau Claire were well into the 80s. We're talking mid-80s, and Minneapolis hit a high temperature yesterday in the upper 80s. So there was absolutely still some heat, but mainly out towards the west where the sun was shining. Those of us in the east, we had been dealing with that cloud cover. Temperatures are still going to rise a little bit heading into Friday. Looks like all my sensors must just be in the process of updating here. But you can see the high temperature come Friday is kind of the standout right now. That's going to be our warmest day. There you go. This must be the time where everything updates, apparently. But again, you can see that the warmest day is going to be Friday, and then we start to take that pretty dramatic turn when it comes to temperatures dropping. Sunday on into Monday, temperatures will struggle a little bit, and those are pretty far below average. And then you can see, too, the temperature outlook towards the end of the week and into your Labor Day weekend, following that trend with the possibility of well below average temperature. So this all pretty much starts by the second half of the weekend. And I would say just maybe expect a little taste of fall. We mentioned it yesterday. It's still looking very likely as we forecast today.
It's quite the trend, and as we like to say in forecasting, the trend is your friend, because if it keeps on with that, it typically does play out. So it does look like we'll have a little taste of September. You have your little pumpkin spice latte. It won't feel as weird when you go to Menards and you see all the Halloween stuff up.
That's true, or Costco.
I didn't mean to single out Menards. Basically, all of the big box stores have the giant skeletons and the inflatable which is out. So at least by the weekend or early next week, it'll start to feel like maybe that really is around the corner.
And good for back to school, too.
That's true, to get the kids
You'd rather
in
have
the
it
right
cooler than
headspace.
scalding hot.
And it's funny we're talking about cooling because before we go to break, we want to talk about warming and melting over in northern Italy. One of the biggest glaciers in northern Italy is melting so rapidly that it can't be measured the way it has been for over a century. Geologists say the Vencia Glacier in the Lombardy region has melted so much so due to climate change that benchmarks used to keep track of its melting measurements over the past 130 years, they don't even work anymore. They say after this year's hot summer there, stakes used as guidelines to measure the glacier's yearly retraction are now buried under rock and under rock slides and snowmelt and debris. So this made the entire terrain too unsteady for future in-person monitoring visits, so they can't even go and take the measurements. Geologists say this glacier has already lost just over a mile in length since being first measured, and the benchmarks were positioned back in front of the glacier in 1895, so over a century of measurements there. The Lombardy glacial region there, and the service in that area says that it now uses drone imagery and remote sensing to keep track of the ongoing melting and shrinkage. So fascinating that the speed of that has picked up so dramatically. Absolutely. And you also don't think of glaciers when you think of Italy.
No, not at all.
That's what caught my eye there. All right, well, hopefully you think of us when you think of weather. Do that for a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back with more. right, welcome back to Wisconsin Weather Experts right here on Fox Local and the Fox 6 YouTube channel. You had a little bit of this, obviously, in our regional update, but Hurricane Erin continues to make news.
It's a massive storm.
It's huge, physically huge.
Yeah, when you look at it on satellite and radar. But North Carolina's Outer Banks are bracing for flooding from Hurricane Erin. Although the storm's not expected to make landfall, evacuation orders are in effect there as some roads could be hit with high waves up to 15 feet. And now we ran something during the 11 a.m. news. Officials have already said that the interstate getting in and out has already been covered by water at times. So, you know, it's already happening. Erin is expected to produce dangerous waves, rip currents, and could bring tropical force winds to the coast of North Carolina.
Well, there is a big storm out there, but due to the proximity of the storm and how close it's going to be to shore here, I feel pretty confident that we're going to be all right as far as tide goes, whatnot. The highway probably will wash out at somewhere between Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning, but aside from that, I believe for the most part, everything's going to be all right.
Sounds like it's not his first hurricane, right? And as he said, the interstate washing out for sure, but there is some danger there with the surf and the rip currents. The U.S. Air Force is actually helping weather officials measure the intensity of Hurricane Erin. The U.S. Defense Department says the Air Force Reserve hurricane hunters are working with the U.S. Navy and partner agencies to collect real-time data on waves, currents, and atmospheric turbulence caused by Erin. The squadron dropped buoys into the ocean right out ahead of the storm. Forecasters expect the center of the hurricane to remain pretty far offshore. That's the saving grace with this, because had this made landfall, it's a massive storm. It would have been horrifically tragic, but it has remained far offshore. But again, the outer edges of this monster are likely to bring those high waves and large swells we've been talking about, and potentially life-threatening rip currents, which we've had locally here as well a lot lately with the wind coming in off the lake.
Absolutely.
So rip currents are very dangerous, and stay out of the water, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, switching gears a little bit, now we're going to talk about mosquitoes and World Mosquito Day.
Kind of fits with all the flooding we've had.
Yes, exactly.
Usually ends up with a lot more mosquitoes at the end of that.
The heat, the humidity, yeah, that all makes sense. Well, today is World Mosquito Day, so a reminder that these tiny pests are more than just a summer nuisance. They are responsible for spreading some of the world's deadliest diseases, including malaria, dengue, and Zika. Remember Zika? Wow, I haven't heard that in a while.
That's right.
All right, this day marks the 1897 discovery by British doctor Sir Ronald Ross that malaria is carried by mosquitoes, a breakthrough that forever changed public health. The 2025 theme is Accelerating the Fight Against Malaria for a More Equitable World. Now, highlighting efforts to improve access to prevention, treatment, and new vaccines, especially in vulnerable communities. Health experts warn that children, pregnant women, the elderly, and those in areas dealing with poverty as well as climate change are the most at risk. Globally, millions are still affected each year, and researchers stress that eliminating standing water, using bed nets, and applying repellents remain simple but critical defenses. Now, while bites may be itchy, the real danger is the diseases that they carry, as we just talked about. So that is what World Mosquito Day is all about. It's just raising awareness.
Yes, not exactly a celebration of the mosquito, more just making sure everybody's aware that, well, you know, we kind of think of them as just a nuisance. They can be very problematic. So yeah, cover up and put on some protective spray. But while you're doing that, we'll take a quick break and come back, and we're going to talk video games next.
everybody to Wisconsin weather experts.
That's right. So weather effects, if you've ever played a video game, usually it's just kind of a background thing, but we got details of one where the patterns actually do affect the gameplay. Fox's invading and Fox Weather's Steve Bender spoke to a developer behind the remaster of Zombie Apocalypse and Days Gone and how the weather actually works in the game.
Play a game of Mario Kart World and the rain doesn't make you slip. The wind doesn't blow you across the track. But in the zombie-like survival game Days Gone by Bend Studios, weather does affect your character. We joined Fox Weather's Steve Bender for a chat with studio head Chris Reese and community manager Kevin McAllister about the game, which has recently been remastered for the PlayStation 5.
Central Oregon became the backdrop for Days Gone. We're in the high desert, so we actually see quite a variety of weather. And it's not rainy and dreary all the time.
Reese told us about some wicked weather that didn't make the cut for the game.
We experimented a lot with different things, including natural disasters, right? Which, being where Bend is located, we actually had early plans for the Cascade area where we had a forest fire sequence.
We asked if they pitched their ideas to license to other studios to make other games more realistic.
We're all the time knowledge sharing resources, understanding the audience, understanding what our players want.
And one last note for content creators, your dreams can come true if you want to turn your YouTube channel into a career in the industry. That's how McAllister got his job with Bend.
Started off as pretty much a small-time Days Gone content creator, believe it or not, and found my way here to the studio and into the industry.
The full interview will be available on the Fox on Games podcast in just a few weeks, so make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. In New York, Eamon Dignam, Fox News.
Pretty impressive. There you go. Weather's everywhere, and so are we. We'll see you tomorrow.